I love grid journaling as a tool to try things on and explore. Today, I'm going to be specifically exploring contrast, how much is too much, and how subtle is too subtle. So, the reason I love grid journaling is because I can take 18 tiny squares that are about 2 inches by 2 inches, try different amounts of contrast on, see what I like better, and let that inform how I proceed from here on out. If I don't know you yet, my name's Jackie Schomburg. I'm an abstract artist and I love mixed media. So I love painting, collaging, drawing with crayons, the whole kit and caboodle. My goal for these videos is to help you increase your creative confidence. If you've always wanted to start making art, if you're an artist but you got stuck somewhere along the way, I'm here to encourage you and help you find your way back. The first thing I'm doing is drawing the squares, and I'm using a mix of Hansa yellow and yellow ochre to put something in the squares. I'm not thinking too much about this because, again, I'm just looking to experiment with contrast. So these contrast each other a little bit, different shades of yellow, different values, some light and some dark, but this is really just forming the background of my little exploration. Within each square, I can choose something different. I can put the light on top, I can put the light on the bottom, I can make the light a little strip, I can make the light the whole thing. All these little differences allow me to see so many different options all at a glance. Again, grid journaling fan here. I love it. I mixed in a little bit of teal with my dirty brush with the yellows to get this little subtle green. I didn't put it in every square, and then I just added some really almost straight from the bottle teal. Almost. Again, using dirty brushes very intentionally just to get the colors to meld a bit. And I'm using, straight off the bat, I'm just using different brushes. So the first brush I use is about 1 inch wide. This is probably, I don't know, it's smaller than 1/4 of an inch, maybe, I don't even know. It's a smaller brush. And so that's one thing that I can do to change the scale. So the other brush, almost one brush stroke across, was about half the square, probably 40% of the square. And this just gives me a different opportunity. So one way to achieve contrast, switch your brushes. Easy peasy. Also just holding your brushes differently. I don't know if you noticed, but the bottom right square that I did on the right page, I was holding the brush at the very, very, very far end of the handle and just trying to put some rough, imperfect lines in. When my decision-making brain is overloaded, I sometimes just let the brushes make more of the decisions by having less control over holding the brush. Now I'm taking some magazine collage pictures. This is a very dark color. It's not officially black because there is some texture and there are some differences within that, but it's very hard to see online, sorry. I'm using some gloss medium and a color shaper to glue that in. Right off the bat, because the blackish color is so different from the yellows and oranges and greens that are already in the square, your eye is instantly drawn to them. So increase in contrast, value contrast, going from light to dark. If you have something light, a bunch of yellows, and you put something very dark in, it will attract your eye. This next little pattern that I'm working in here, collage-wise, because it's light and dark, and it's repeating a form of stripes, that will also grab your attention. whenever you've got light and dark right next to each other, or a big value difference between the two, that will also draw you in. So look how much more interesting this has become just by adding a handful of small collage pieces. At the beginning, you saw me, I was pulling out some large scale, big painted circles. I pulled out these, the stripy things I've already glued down, and then I made some just hand drawn with an ink pen, small circles. And there's nothing right or wrong about any of these sizes. I just want you to notice how the scale of what I'm adding changes the square that I'm adding it to. So what feels different about the striped pieces I added versus these tiny little circles? There's a little bit less contrast with the circles because I'm adding it on tissue paper, but it's not opaque white behind it. So now it's yellow behind those tiny circles instead of white. The stripes do have more of a white color. And then this is the highest contrast, which is kind of a thick black line against opaque white. It's the highest contrast you can get value-wise. And kapow, there's no missing that in that square. You're going to see it, you're going to notice it. Even across all 18 squares, that's the square my eye goes to now. Same with that upper left. Once that curvy piece goes in, my eye instantly goes there too. It's so much more interesting to me personally in my aesthetic to have those big, bold marks. Instantly, I'm like, ooh, tell me more about that square. What is going on there? The other squares are kind of cool in their own way, but just by adding these really extreme value differences and scale differences, instantly it kind of makes the other squares look a little bit more boring, or at least less noticeable. How's that? They don't stand out as much because this white, black, larger mark combo really steals the show. So for me personally, I love the bold contrast that these marks bring. Love it. It's also good to have subtle things happening as well. So I still like that there's the yellow and green and kind of golden yellow ochre behind them, behind those pieces. And I'm still choosing to add some tissue paper pieces so that it will become more transparent and I can see the color behind it. There's no right or wrong amount of contrast. It depends what you're going for. There are some artists who work entirely in very subtle pastels. There are artists who use only black and white. And then there's everything in between. I tend to use the in-between, but I pull from both sides. So I love the black and white extreme contrast and value. And I also love having more subtle things in the same painting with that high contrast. The reason I chose to add these tiny stripes, these thin pen lines, was to get a second scale change from those other stripes that I had with the collage pieces. So those magazine collage pieces that are kind of stripy. This echoes the same shape in that there are lines, but it's a bit different. They're not as exact. They're a little wobbly because I've hand drawn them. So that's one difference. And they're also much thinner. So it's just a smaller scale. Echoing the same shape on a different scale. Same thing I did with the larger things actually, because those large black circles on the white paper are a huge scale change from the tiny little circles that I made on the tissue. I decided to add this minty green and then wipe some lines away to expose some of the stuff underneath. There was a lot of sameness happening in some of those squares, and I wanted to break it up a bit. In this way, not every magazine piece or collage piece I put was just stuck on top, adding some depth there as well. So the mint green, gives a little nod to the other greens that are there, but it's clearly a different value. It's a much lighter color. And it's also very different from that yellow ochre and the other mid-tones happening. So no matter which of these squares appeals to you most, hopefully you're getting more of a sense of what does appeal to you in terms of contrast. Do you prefer the far left, middle, and bottom squares that have just the different shades of green with a little bit of yellow in there? There's a lot of subtle changes. There are differences there, for sure. There's at least 4 or 5 colors in each of those squares, but it's a much more gentle switch between colors than the square on the top left on the far left page with the giant white and black piece, the stripes below, the greens, the yellows, everything else. There's no right or wrong. It's all personal preference. Highly recommend using a grid journal to give yourself the gift of seeing 18 variations on something before you move to a larger space, or just to do it in itself as its own little study. It's just fun sometimes to try things on, or when you get new supplies, this is also great. I do have a grid journaling made easy guide that is free. I'm happy to send it to you. You can click on the link in the upper right hand corner, and I'll also link it in the description below. So tell me, what's your perfect blend of contrast? Do you like more of the super high contrast when it comes to values, or do you like something really subtle? I'd love to hear in the comments.